This and all talks at the 2020 JavaScript for WordPress conference are brought to you in part by our sponsors Frontity and GoDaddy Pro. Frontity is the easiest way to create performant websites using WordPress and React. It connects both seamlessly so you can focus on building your site instead of all the tooling and configuration. Open source and free to use. GoDaddy Pro Hosting offers a robust suite of free tools to web developers and designers to help them save time managing all their clients and sites. Your free membership also includes advanced 24/7 technical support.
Okay, let's begin. Today's I will talking about the Ionic React and Capacitor, and today's keyword is native PWA, not native application, not PWA, native PWAs. And here's today's agenda. First, introduce Capacitor and Ionic, and why should we use Capacitor, and learn about how can we use Capacitor and Ionic, and the next step, show example code how to create native PWA using the Capacitor with Ionic, and final, to show tips to integrate the Capacitor with Jamstack applications. And I already create two example applications in GitHub. If you're interested about this full code, please visit this URL. Wait a minute. Okay. My name is Hide, working on Digital Cube in Japan, and now in Japan it's 6 a.m. Okay. My work is shifted to create a WordPress site, WordPress hosting service. Okay, let's begin. First, introduce about the Capacitor and Ionic. Capacitor is a cross-platform native runtime for web applications. This is similar to Apache Cordova and PhoneGap. We can easily convert your application to native application, and we can convert to your single-page application to iOS and Android and Electron, and also PWA. And Capacitor provides native API. Capacitor provides API to connect device native APIs. And Ionic is a UI toolkit. This is easy to collaborate many famous frameworks like Angular and React and Vue, or just native JavaScript. So we can easy to use Ionic from your favorite framework. And Ionic provides compatible UI between web and native device. So we can easy to create web and native application from single code base. So using the Ionic and Capacitor, we can easy to create cross-platform application from single code. So Ionic provides cross-platform friendly UI components, and the Capacitor help us to access the device native API and build your application to the native and web applications. So we just maintain single code base, but we can provide your application to more various platforms. And let's talk about why should we use Capacitor. So our question is, why should we focus on native PWA? Many people say that PWA is a good solution to provide your application to the cross-platform. But so yes, PWA is good solution, but not complete and perfect solution. Why? Because PWA can provide application-like experience via the web, and we can easy to create a installable application and use a device native application like a web share and a push notification and a payment and more and more. But another API, we can still not access. If you want to access the API like web audio or geolocation or more secret API, so we have to create a native application using the Objective-C or Java or Swift and more. That's about news for JavaScript developer. And recently, Apple said many API declined to Safari. In Safari, this API doesn't use from the browser. So if we want to use this API like network information or battery status or web HID, so we have to create a native application. But our solution is Capacitor. We need to change mind. Before we decide to PWA or native application. But next, using the Capacitor, we can focus on the native and PWA. So that's why native PWA we said. The Capacitor provides wrapper API from the PWA and native. And we just call single Capacitor API, and Capacitor bridge the API call to the optimized device API. And Ionic provides the device optimized UI component. So use the Capacitor and Ionic, we can easy to create PWA and native application from JavaScript. And Capacitor provides a very many useful APIs. For example, in this code, Capacitor check your browser is camera API available. So we can easy to check the device availability and change the view and change the functionality. And there's an example list of the core API of Capacitor. Capacitor provides accessibility and native background task and open the browser and access the native clipboard and device file system and open the toast notification and use a geolocation, check the network status and push notification and more. So we can easy to use these native API from JavaScript. Wait a minute. And Capacitor has many plugins. Capacitor has a plugin ecosystem and many plugins. Like it's similar to WordPress. Next, let's get started to see the example of community plugins. First, the Capacitor communities /contact that plugin access your browser, your device's contact list. So we can easy to get the customer's device's contact list and show it in your web UI. And using the Capacitor biometrics auth plugins, we can easy to use the Face ID and Touch ID into your native applications. Then, if we want to play any audio file for the game or any application, we can use native audio plugin. The plugin is control the preload or play or stop on a resume, so we can easy to control the native audio players. Otherwise, there are more various plugins, like using the single sign-on, using the ops. Wait a minute. Using the Google AdMob and connect Apple Game Center or Google Play. Oh, wait. すいませんね。ちょっと待ってね。Yeah. and open the QR code scanner or text-to-speech or camera preview, and more. We can easy to find it out in the npmjs.com. And at Capacitor community is it's similar to the WordPress.org plugin directory. If we want to add your own Capacitor plugin to register here, we need to pass the certification from the Capacitor core team. And of course, we can publish the common plugin using the common plugin to npm.js. So we can easy to find the two ways to find out the Capacitor plugin from npm.js. Next. Yes, how can we use the capacitors? If you already have the single page application, we can easy to add capacitor to your application because capacitor is a simple node module. So we just install capacitor core library into your package.json and execute the npx cap init. Then Capacitor will set up your application. And if you're using any application framework like a Create React app or Gatsby or Next or more, these framework define the different build output directory. So we need to check capacitor.config.js and to check WebGL attribute and to change your framework destination. In this slide, the example is change the www to public. The example is good for the Create React app application or Ionic React. And if you want to add any native application support, you just run cap add command. If we want to support iOS, we just run npx cap add iOS. And if you want to support Android, npx cap add Android. And if you want to create a desktop application, just use npx cap add Electron. That's so simple. And if you complete add these tasks, we can open your application using the npx cap open command. If you execute npx cap open electron command, Capacitor will call electron and open your application as a desktop applications. And if you execute npx cap open iOS, Capacitor will open the Xcode, and Xcode will build your Capacitor compiled application to iOS application. So we can easy to check your iOS application from the Xcode device simulator. And if you update your single page application after setup Capacitor, we need to execute the two commands. First is just build your SV application. For example, Create React app, we need to run npm run build. For example, if you're using the Gatsby, we need to run Gatsby build. And then we need to build artifact sync to Capacitor. So we need to run npx cap sync command. npx cap sync command will copy the builder application and check the package.json and to add native application plugin like a pod or any SDKs. So Capacitor will help many ways to create a native application, but most simplest uses is just compile. So Capacitors convert your single page application to the native application. So, and we can publish the created artifact to native application. Like if we want to publish iOS application, we can take the iOS directory and open the Xcode project and publish your iOS application from Xcode. And if you want to publish Android application, take the Android directory and open the Android Studio and publish Android application. And if you want to publish desktop application, check the Electron directory and use several Electron CLI to publish your native applications. So, and we can learn how to use the Capacitor to publish the native application. And let's talk about the native PWA usage. So Capacitor is not only build application, but provide the API bridge. So if we want to native share API, we can import Capacitor core library from Capacitor core plugin and to execute the plugin share method. Then your web application will open the native social share UI. And the example is a React hook example to check the network status change. This red line is checking the current network status using the Capacitor API, and this line is add event listener to check network status change. So if your application, if your device will change the network as offline, the event listener will execute. Then finally, this line is using the Capacitor toast plugin to notify if your network is offline. So this example just show the network notification, but if you want to use the offline support application, you can check the network status, and if network come again, so we can fetch API again using these hooks. And for PWAs, we just use Capacitor plugin. Some API will throw error because native browser does not support any APIs. But never mind, Capacitor team provide a PWA element library. This is a provide web component for the camera or toaster or many browser unsupported APIs. So we just add the define custom element to execute the application root. Your application will work camera or toast or many API in your browser. So we can provide the same experience between native and PWAs. So using the Capacitor is access native API from JavaScript, and the PWA element is used for PWA. So use both library, we can create native and PWA applications. And talking about Ionic React. So important things, Capacitor does not provide UI components, but it's a Ionic. The Ionic will provide instead. And Ionic is support React, Vue, and Angular, and native JS, and we can use the almost similar syntax. If we want to show the content, use the Ion content, and if you want to show the button, you just call the Ion button. Almost similar rule in the JS library, so we can share the knowledge of the several frameworks. And Ionic provide the platform style component. If you set iOS mode, the Ionic list component will optimize for iOS style. And if you set the material design, your application list will change depends on the material design. And of course, Ionic is officially support dark mode. So we can easy to support dark mode and iOS native UI and Android native UI from the single code base. And Capacitor is maintained by Ionic team. So Capacitor and Ionic is a good relation. We can easy to set up Ionic application with Capacitor. And if you're interested about how to create the Ionic with Capacitor application with WordPress, I will blog in our blog post and show an example. If you're interested in it, please check it my blogs. And this is a simple use case in Japanese web magazine. This is a Japanese web magazine, and the application will provide from not only web but the iOS App Store or Google Play. And the application made by Ionic and Capacitor with and WordPress.com. Almost content is hosted in the WordPress.com, and get the content using the WP API and the WordPress.com API. And the UI is using the Ionic and call several native API like a Firebase or authentication or Apple Payment or more using the Capacitor. Anyway, if you want to create a headless application or JavaScript application using WordPress, I strongly recommend use the headless WordPress hosting because we need to maintain the JavaScript application and WordPress server and WordPress application, but we want to focus on the front end using the JavaScript. So we need to find out a fully managed WordPress hosting like a Pantheon or Shifter Headless or WordPress.com and more and more. So we need to, in this point, I think many hosting service will focus on the headless WordPress to provide any service or functionality. So we need to check many hosting service. Okay, finally, talking about the tips of integration Capacitor with Jamstack. So before the topic, I was talking about the focus on the single page application, but we can use Capacitor for Jamstack application, use like a Gatsby or Next.js or QuickSum or more and more. But there's a problem to simply use this. The problem is this. If you just install Capacitor and PWA element to your Gatsby or QuickSum project and you try to build your application, you will suffer this error. Because some tool like a PWA element loader using the window property and Ionic too, but Node.js has no window object, so in browser this function is work well, but generating HTML using the Node.js, so we need to find out any solution to ignore the window property from the SSR. And this is my idea using the Node.js lazy load. React use effect hook is execute async functions. So check use effect function in your component and check the window property availability. And if window property available, import PWA element or Capacitor property. And if you want to get any component using the Capacitor API, we can use similar way to load component. And if you set component, we can use a use state. And this screenshot is my example application using the Gatsby and the Capacitor. So we can load, we can use a lazy load to import the PWA element and use capacitor element. So Gatsby build will pass and then execute npx cap sync and npx cap open iOS. We can check the Gatsby build API, Gatsby build application with using the capacitor APIs. So finally, we can create native and PWA, native PWA with JavaScript. So Capacitor unify the API calling between native and web, and Ionic unify the UI style between native and web. So if we're using the Capacitor and Ionic, we can easy to create a cross-platform support application from single code base. Of course, we can use JavaScript, not JavaScript or TypeScript, and so use the tool. We can provide, we can promote your content more and more, many approaches. And thank you for hearing my talk. This link is our blog post or example GitHub code. So if you're interested, please check it out. Thank you. And if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Hidetaka, for your wonderful presentation. That was awesome. Apologies for the breaking internet earlier. Okay, so we have a question here for you.
Okay.
Somebody is asking, does Capacitor or Ionic offer the same or similar performance as building a native application?
I think the answer is no, because Capacitor and Ionic build similar to web UI application, like HTML5 application. But almost native application called native API directly, like Swift or Sumerian, Swift or Objective-C or Java. So native language is most faster. But using Ionic or Capacitor, we can easy to maintain your native application using JavaScript. I think this is a trade-off.
Okay. Thank you for that. I hope you got that, Daniel. Yes. So does any other person have any questions for Hidetaka? Where is the easiest place to reach you on GitHub, right?
Oh, what? I'll share the example repository URL.
Awesome. Thank you for that.